Blizzard have done it again. Their class design strike team has rescued yet another class from the brink. You may not have realized it, but any mage player will let you in the secrets. In the past 10 years, despite a handful of reworks, the class has been rotting from the inside. Rune of Power is a perfect example of this. It's an iconic spell, but it's also massively toxic when raid bosses drop an AoE on top of it or you just get screwed by a random swirly. Over the years, it went from the advanced player option to being a necessary pick, making it a massive pain point for everyone else. And Blizzard were afraid for years. They just didn't have the stones to remove it. Until now. In 10.1.5, Rune of Power is gone, and mages will be freed from the shackles of that particular little circular prison. In all seriousness though, Mage is changing from a class that's been kind of hard to recommend to something that damn near everyone is going to be able to enjoy. It's getting some of its coolest spells made viable again, some of the biggest pain points are gone, and, to quote an active member of the Altered Time Discord, quote, "We now look like an actual functioning spec." So yeah, it may not sound like it, but that's actually massive praise. So let's get into the real damn good job the Blizzard are doing and why it might make you want to play a mage now. Or our sponsor. Squarespace.com/Bellular Gaming, the place to get established on the web, and they've got an awesome new product. It's called Biosites. And it basically brings Squarespace's design prowess to a category that honestly usually doesn't look great. So Biosites, they've got these lovely, rich modules to put your content first, and they're full of great features to help you stand out, earn some money by even accepting payments directly on your link in bio website, and of course, connecting with your audience with all your different social content and platforms, and of course you get lovely analytics and reporting on all of it. Even if you don't have something to sell, and say you're wanting to do portfolios or a CV, well, putting your best foot forward is a really good idea on the internet. If you've got a really nice link in bio site, then that means that anyone who's going through your social media, clicking on your link, they're getting a process, a flow that is designed by you that feels professional. And if you give people that good end-to-end sort of positive experience, it'll be really good for the first impressions as you're actually making on the internet. And that's a major way that Squarespace can help you in your day-to-day. And then, of course, with your bio site done, over on full Squarespace, you can nail down your full site using their award-winning templates, or even by creating your own template using their new template blueprint feature that takes the already smooth process and makes it, absurdly smooth. And that's all with their brilliant feature set, having e-commerce, memberships, email newsletters, all those things all together in an all-in-one platform that is just easy to use. So build your site today. Use code Bellular Gaming for 10% off an annual plan when you're ready to send it live, and that is squarespace.com/Bellular Gaming. Thanks to them, and let's go. This isn't a full revamp like with Rat Paladin, it's a surgical strike, and to paraphrase another mage main, they didn't need to be rebuilt, just some thought needed to be put into the class, and now that is finally happening. One of the biggest things, of course, is the death of Rune of Power, and that solves two major problems. One, it was so strong that being forced to move out of it, which is often something out of your own control, just deleted your damage. Two, it put a massive emphasis on cooldown reduction talents because it double dipped with your main cooldowns. So brave change to remove something so iconic, yes, because Rune of Power, we all know it, but most players are actually overjoyed. Mage now has freedom to move and does damage regularly, like it belongs in modern WoW, instead of an older version of the game where, standing still was something that was allowed, there wasn't 500 billion swirlies all the time, and your damage wasn't in just one CD window. They also get some great new utility, like Mass Barrier. It gives you and 4 allies Barrier, just sweet. Ice Cold is a new talent that replaces Ice Block when you don't need the full nuclear option of immunity. Ice Cold gives you a massive 70% damage reduction for 6 seconds, but you can move, you can cast, you can do damage. Ice Block is great when it's needed, but this is going to be probably more useful in more fights. They also get Mass Invis, basically Mage Shroud, for trash skips and that kind of thing. All of this and a revamped, more opened up class tree just means that all mages come out swinging. There is still room to improve, yes, but it's pretty damn good so far. And with that, let's dive into the specs themselves. Do you remember Glacial Spike? Because it's back, and I mean it always was here, but it's pretty much been useless. So with some smart changes to Icy Veins, Haste, and Mastery scaling to amazing spells, Glacial Spike and Ray of Frost are actually as strong as they deserve to be. Also, the Icy Veins buffs are also fantastic. They always kind of felt weak, but the spec relied on them having nearly 100% uptime via extensions and cooldown reduction, and that just meant that it felt weak as a cooldown, but it was very punishing when it was dropped. So the good news here is that's now solved. It adds more damage, yes, but the uptime extension has been nerfed and the cooldown reduction has been removed. Instead, it's now a fixed 2-minute cooldown instead of a 3-minute cooldown. So now, downtime outside of Icy Veins isn't going to feel anywhere near as bad. The button itself feels better to press because it actually gives you a bit of burst, and you're allowed to actually use cool spells instead of just Frostbolt and Ice Lance, which is great. Now, the bad news is that some of the damage does come from summoning your Water Elemental. Yes, it now comes along with Icy Veins. So that's cool, but it is at the expense of you having your Water Elemental as a permanent summon. A lot of people like that just for leveling and flavor. On the bright side, compared to never seeing the Water Elemental because it was always tuned to be bad, at least seeing it during a cooldown window does kind of feel good. Now, their AoE has also been massively upgraded. This is pretty sick. Blizzard and Cold Snap are baseline. Comet Storm is easier to pick up, and Cone of Cold has a whole new interaction, where Coldest Snap increases its cooldown to 45 seconds, but it actually makes it apply Winter's Chill and reset the cooldown of Frozen Orb and Comet Storm. So it just went from Frozen Orb, Blizzard, Mash Ice Lance to this crazy cool AoE burst sequence. Who knows, might even be too much. Some people are actually worried that Frost may have too many buttons now, which is a crazy thought. In essence then, this spec has went from throwing Frost Bolts and Ice Lances inside of a tiny circle to being actual masters of launching various forms of ice in big old spikes of damage and eventually summoning their elemental again, doing AoE like they've got access to the nuclear launch codes, and generally just being way more fun to play while not actually making them feel worse for players who want to opt into that simplicity. You get a choice. You might lose DPS rankings and think Arcane or Fire are meta choices, but Frost is the one that people actually play the most. So it's good that it's in a good state, and of course it is played the most, followed by Fire. So let's do it. Fire didn't get quite as much love as Frost, but it still got some crazy smart, like laser-targeted fixes to key problems. Namely, Cauterize is baseline, freeing up a talent, Flame Strike is baseline, and now has been massively improved, Sun King's Blessing has been fixed, and it now has an alternative that's a bit easier to play, and the insane Casino Fire Mage talent is now also easier to play with, or you can pick Meteor instead. So the first big thing then is that Sun King's Blessing now lasts twice as long, so you can just use it at a better time, and it also gives the activating spell a ton more damage, so it feels great. The hard casting, the Pyroblast sucks, but when it does eye-watering damage, it doesn't suck. The cast time feels very justified. There's also an alternative if you don't like that hard casting, which is called Unleashed Inferno, that reduces the cooldown of Combustion and buffs it like crazy. The second, then, is that their AoE actually uses Flame Strike instead of just spreading ignites around the place. It also now procs Hot Streak, which means, well, basically, you drop a Flame Strike almost every other GCD in AoE, which is pretty crazy fun, and Meteor is now in the Fire tree instead of the Class tree, so you are dropping huge flame strikes and meteors on your targets instead of just doing your single target and spreading those ignites around. I mean, hell, Meteor even, it might actually look good for single target fights right now. So take your pick. Do you want Hypothermia, which procs instant Pyroblast for 6 seconds, or do you want to drop a Meteor on a boss? You're kind of spoiled for choice. On single target then, they fixed a few core problems. Feel the Burn is a mastery buff they juggle with Fire Blast, meaning that the right way to play was to basically awkwardly hold your Fire Blast, but they made it so Phoenix Flames works too. There's also From the Ashes, which made you want to keep Phoenix charges for extra mastery, but now it's the opposite. You get rewarded for casting, not holding. Fire basically has become quite a bit more forgiving to optimize. It's a lot more versatile when it's actually choosing its talents. It's a total beast to play without removing any of the parts that actually felt great to it. So it very much is looking like a huge win. Arcane Mage, the choice for all of the big wrinkly-brained people out there, and certainly not me. Well, maybe, who knows. Anyway, it got the least love of all, but it's enough to get by. Now, it's got one of the reputations of being one of the few remaining, crazy hard specs in the game, and the good news is it's staying that way. I think it would suck to change it away from what it has been. It gets a small but effective wave of changes. Most of the change you feel is from Rune of Power's absence, but there are also AoE improvements, talent tree upgrades, and decent quality of life. Arcane Barrage and Clear Casting are baseline, freeing up talents, allowing Blizz to add some AoE damage to Clear Casting. Evocation now channels faster with Siphon Storm, so you'll get, of course, your int stacks faster that way, because you get int when you are channeling that. The biggest win, though, is their AoE with Orb Barrage. Just look at this. It's crazy. So your Arcane Barrage now can fire off an orb. Orbs generate charges which you spend on Barrage. So you are just throwing out these orbs all over the place, which is kind of mad. Mad. Then the added utility like the Mass Barrier, that also goes extra hard for Arcane because their barrier grants magic damage reduction. So that's a really strong addition to the group. Now, unlike Fire, they've not had a bunch of changes to make optimization easy. The rotation pages still look scary. They still look like this, just, no Rune of Power. To be honest, it's not actually that complicated. It's just that it's a very rigid structure that you have to follow with a few asterisks depending on procs. I suppose you could say it's disappointing that a lot of the more awkward stuff hasn't been fixed. Say sometimes you clip arcane missiles early because they just do so little damage, and then you conjure mana gems mid-fight because it only holds 3 charges. Also, things like having to be in melee for arcane explosion in a game where obviously being in melee is designed to be pretty dangerous. That's kind of frustrating. Hey, there you go, Mage, you got to deal with storming, congratulations. There are tons of just little annoyances that seem to have been skipped over for this patch. I suppose hopefully they're willing to pick that up in the next one, because we are this close to just mage-wide greatness. Remaining issues. There are some remaining issues that hopefully will be addressed. The first major one that everybody talks about is the double time warp. Since it's been added, mages have been calling for that to be a separate button, because if they are the only one who can do it, and the rest of the group needs to hold it, then they lose a ton of personal damage. Augmentation Evoker's got something similar, but they can activate it with their own ability, which is honestly kind of unfair. It's like you have this strong thing with your time warp and you're just, you gotta hold it. Weird. Mages also, well, they still have almost no answer to defensively, to deal with rot damage, right? So, your constant ticking stuff, like in Halls of Infusion or half of the raid tiers fights. Another small problem for them then is really just for every mage tree, they are sort of full of tiny little talents that don't matter too much, and you just pick them to get the more important ones, right? It's one of those things with talent trees, sometimes there are just big point sinks, maybe it feels like there's a bit too much of that. There's also worries over Rune of Power impacting their damage profile. Arcane and Fire are going to really miss having that extra burst in the very, in the right window, because you could really concentrate that with your Rune of Power. And yes, there is a 15% buff that the class has got across all of its abilities to replace Rune of Power, but it of course won't feel the same. Also, make shifting power mage themed. Make it a time thing like Ogvoker's time skip. Cheers. Do that. That'll be good. Ultimately, though, the list of long-standing issues with the Mage class has shrank massively here, and this is even to the point where the Mage's very own Discord almost thinks that there's some new developer, that old Dave the Dev, who they previously had as a sort of joking character involved in Mages, where they're thinking that, oh dear, Dave's been replaced, and now we've got changes. Which is probably not what happened, but it's funny. So the real question then, should you pick up Mage with these new changes? It's not a turbo easy yes with Arcane, because there's a lot to learn there that maybe feels unintentional and could be annoying to you. If you want a challenging spec that's usually rewarded for it, then knock yourself out. But Fire and Frost are, I think, extremely easy to recommend after these changes. all the mage goodness, portals, arcane intellect, ice block, blink, alter time, invisibility, mass barrier. It all just adds up to a good class to sink hundreds of hours into properly mastering. If you maybe watched Pints, 10,000 hours of mage video, even though yes, it was classic, you probably get it. Mages can just do cool mage things. You do just get some of the more satisfying personal optimizations of any class, and that's just cool. Combine it with Frost now having the game's most satisfying spell, in some people's opinion, Glacial Spike. I suppose it's up there with Chaos Bolt in terms of something that's just, boom. Fire then has some of its annoying complexity tuned down so that everybody can enjoy the instant pyro fireworks. And I really think it'll be very easy to fool around with a mage, see how it feels, and have some fun. So Blizzard, another job well done, and I definitely look forward to seeing what they're going to rescue next. I dearly hope it is Hunter. All right, that's it, mages. Pretty damn good time. I used to raid with one in Sepulchre. Pretty sure I'm going to bring it up to 70 and fool around with it a bit soon. All right, that's it for me. Let me know. Mage, yes, no, maybe. What are you going to do? Are you a mage main? Are you happy? And would you consider going mage after this video? I definitely want to hear it. All right. You can watch this video next that will replace my face on the screen, and I'll see you there.